My name's Maddie. I go by the handle othatsraspberry online. Most people know me. I make kind of goofy comics about video games. I've done a lot about like Metal Gear and Resident Evil. Recently, a lot of Silent Hill. But also, I am the community deputy for Grasshopper Manufacture, which is the company that makes games like No More Heroes and Shadows of the Damned.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm really excited to get to that part, but I feel
Yeah,
like you're just as important, in my opinion, as Grasshopper is. So,
thank you.
I want to discuss because I've been following you for a while on Twitter before it was X. Now when it was still Twitter,
Right.
um, and I've read a lot of your comics, and I just like I've always had this question. You create so many. Like, where did you start, and kind of what inspired you to get into just making these fun little comics or games?
Yeah, so I mean, like I've been drawing, forever, and I've always been interested in video games. And ever like I joined Twitter in like 2018, I think. And like I would just kind of post art, and then it kind of became more of like a reaction thing. So like I'm also very into One Piece, and for a while, I draw like just kind of silly reactions to new chapters or whatever. And then and yeah, sometimes I do little comics about video games I played, but it was very kind of just all over the place. But then when I got into the Metal Gear series, I was kind of just making little comics and doodles about, my experience through it. And for some reason, people just really got attached to the Metal Gear ones. And so it just kind of evolved into this thing. And I was, I really have fun making it. And so then it just kind of grew from there. I played through all the Metal Gear games, and then I would do them about. I'm a big fan of like Resident Evil, so I do them about like when the RE4 remake came out. Um, and yeah, and it's the kind of style I do is it's pretty simple, so I can kind of pump them out really quickly. I can kind of react before and put out multiple comics a week.
Awesome, and like I have some of my personal favorites. I really like my personal favorite for the Metal Gear ones is it's I think it's a little newer. It's the one where Snake's like, I hope these frogs aren't poisonous because they taste like poison.
Yeah, that's funny because that's and I'm very upfront when I do this. That's like a very direct reference to an episode of Home Movies. If you're familiar with that show,
I,
but
I
I
I love home
uh
movies. It's
yeah, and so that's a reference to the season 4 episode Camp.
uh
But and like I'm very inspired by Simpsons as well. But anytime I do like a very obvious reference, I make sure to like mention it. But I'm one of those Simpsons brain rot people where it's like sometimes I don't even realize when I'm referencing it.
Oh man, and I see that a lot. There's a lot of intersection among your comics with just various different different forms of media, different like aspects of pop culture. So you're mentioning like The Simpsons and home movies. Why do jumping off of that? Why do you think people gravitate towards me like these popular forms of media? Why do you think people make fan art of Metal Gear or home movies or The Simpsons?
Yeah, so for me, like I've always been doing fan art of video games. Like when I was a kid, I used to draw the pictures out of the like the manuals that came with games or the strategy guides. And I think for me, it was just like a way to further connect with these things I love. Because it's like I have the game, but then it's like, well, I also really like the artwork. And it's like, I like these characters and I want to, just get more out of them than just the game itself. And Metal Gear, like before I got into it, I kind of expected it to be like Splinter Cell or something, kind of like this very serious, like military series. And then realizing it's extremely goofy and very campy.
Oh, it is.
And just, and I think that's an aspect that a lot of people appreciate about it. And the characters are just really interesting, and they have really good personalities. And so it's just so easy for me to like kind of expand upon that and just just kind of have fun playing with them a bit more.
And I definitely agree. Like Metal Gear in particular, like I just finished streaming 5 like a week ago.
Hmm.
And whenever we do these, I have a buddy who makes like some silly icons for my stream. He has never experienced Metal Gear Solid prior to me like streaming these. So every game he's like asking a million questions like, did that really just happen? Or he's
Yeah.
just, or like the crazy things happen. So like when Ocelot in 3 shows up for the very first time, and he meows, and
Yeah.
the Ocelot unit comes out, he was losing his mind. He's like, what is going on?
Yeah, and that's and I think that also is just something that makes Metal Gear really special, and it's just that ability to not take itself too seriously, and I think people appreciate that a lot.
Definitely, I do think there's room for like the serious games, because people like their like Last of Us and things like that. But I think I appreciate stuff as well, like Metal Gear Solid, because it's so silly and goofy sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's just nice to have a kind of range of different levels of seriousness.
Absolutely, and I feel like that's also really, as you said, a really good way to sort of expand upon it with fan art. You know, making taking some of the sillier elements, right, and just kind of giving them more breadth. Expanding upon them, making them even sillier, right? Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And so to sort of continue with the fan art angle of video games, do you feel like an abundance of fan art is like a good sign of like a game, or I guess any property's longevity?
Yeah, it's so interesting because Metal Gear was a weird one for me because I got into it in like a really dead period for the series. I got into it before Konami announced like the Master Collection and Delta.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had been like 8 years since MGS5 came out. Konami kind of was going through this reputation of not really focusing on video games and
Mm-hmm.
making, pachinko machines and all this stuff. Um, and so people, I think, were really excited because they were like, oh, there's a spattering of Metal Gear stuff, but to see someone just like come into it and just kind of explode because they're taking, a 30 years of a series and suddenly going through it in two. Um, but yeah, I mean, you look at any property, and I think the fan community is such a strange thing. It can go very extreme at times, and but
Absolutely. No, I
um,
agree.
people are yeah, it is, and it's the same way for me, where it's a way to connect with something that really resonates with you. And so yeah, it's always a good sign, but it can like go, I think like I would say like Undertale is one of the biggest examples where it just like
Mm-hmm.
evolves into its own thing.
Oh yeah.
There's like layers and layers upon fans creating like alternate universes, and then there's these like alternate universes of those, and it's just like it explodes, and so then it's almost like its own thing at that point.
No, definitely. It's you would say you would agree that it kind of like leaves its own mark on whatever property it's like interacting with.
Yeah, definitely. I do think there is though the danger that also comes with associating a property with its fan base. And that happens a lot because and I would say almost this is true of like anything, but there's always like an extreme part of a fan base or kind of the fans that are aggressive or kind of, attack people who don't like their thing and stuff like that.
Oh, unfortunately,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I think it's just there everything has that, and it's dangerous to just judge something based on its fan base.
Absolutely. Would you say also, to like, I guess, play off of that a bit? Would you say like toxicity is sort of something to be aware of? And I asked this. Obviously, I think you and I know the answer to this,
Mhm.
but like this is more so for people who aren't in the know, aren't as in the know. So like, would you say toxicity is like something to kind of maintain an awareness of when it comes to communities that form around games and properties?
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not used to being in any kind of fandom or dealing with fans of a property, it can be overwhelming, and it could be like, why who are these people and why are they like so aggressive or so weird about this particular thing? And if it's your first experience, it's like, oh, this thing has the toxic fans. But in reality, everything has toxic fans. And so I think that was a really important thing for me when I went through Metal Gear is I went through it like basically blind.
Hmm.
People were telling me they're like, "Oh, like 4 is not good," or you don't need to play Portable Ops," or they were like giving me all these random things, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna play all of them and make my own judgment." And I'm really glad I did because like Portable Ops, which was one of the early PSP titles.
Hmm.
It was kind of a predecessor to Peace Walker, and it's pretty clunky, and it's a lot of stuff on PSP because it only had the one joystick. It's like weird to control,
Hmm.
but I had one of the most fun experiences streaming that, so I'm really glad I just made the decision to experience everything myself.
I really agree. It's like I have well, I with when it came to Metal Gear Solid, I kind of like I played two first myself, and then like afterward I played the rest. I think because at the time a friend just was like, "Here, this one's cool," and I was like, "Oh, cool. All right, sure." And so I played two, and then played one, then three, and then eventually four and the rest. And Portable Ops is just the really the funky one that I've never actually committed to sit down and play because it is a little weird. But I guess because I grew up in the particular era of internet where it wasn't so connected, where you could hear little things here and there, but most things were kind of word of mouth. So at least me and Portable Ops, I do want to give it a try again someday. Just hearing you talk about it, just because
Yeah.
I've tried playing it and it's just like I'm like, like but I played Peace Walker,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
well, and I think I'm really glad I played it before Peace Walker because it's like Peace Walker basically improves on all the mechanics.
Oh,
And so I can understand how challenging it could be to go back to it because it's
mm,
like, oh, this is a similar game without all the quality of life stuff.
definitely. It's just my big thing is the controls. It's like
It's
that's
yeah,
they're
it's
just
rough.
they're really weird. But I've heard so many funky things about it, and I also love how Kojima, on occasion, when they've asked him about Portable Ops, he's like, "Yeah, it could be Ken."
Right? Yeah, it's like always up in the air.
It's always up in the air, and I love that. I sincerely love that. But definitely, yeah, it's good to sort of skirt around that toxicity, right, and just engage on properties on your own
Yeah,
terms.
and I think that's just another I think a lot of, and I'm someone who like I watch, streamers and I watch things and I watch video essays, but I do think there is a bit of an issue that people aren't experiencing media for their own,
Hmm.
like movies, television series, games. They're always experiencing it through someone else's experience. And just in general, I kind of want people to try and just do things themselves a little bit more to become closer with media.
I agree with that as well. I think it's a sort of like the I guess you would call it the TikTokification of a lot of things where where people was like, yeah, oh yeah, I know that episode of the Venture Brothers. It was like there was a clip of it or two on TikTok or
Yeah.
Instagram. I know that show, and it's like
It's like the memification of everything. It's like everything's like reduced into just little parts and you lose a lot of the context.
unfortunately, yeah, and it's the times have changed unfortunately, and I just feel ancient saying that.
Yeah, I know. I understand that.
But it's discussions that my friends and I've had as well, where it's like, things just aren't the same, and some of these kids are like anyone younger than us is like not experiencing the media that we've enjoyed in the same way we did. They're just like they watch someone stream it, or they get clips of it on whatever social media they use, and they experience it that way, and it's just they don't have context, and they don't get the full picture of whatever they're enjoying. um, Definitely something that's changed, and it's interesting to see, but it's also a little frustrating, right?
It is one of those things where it makes me feel like an old person. And it's just like, kids these days.
Same here. I remember my niece was talking about, and my niece, nephew, and my really young cousin I had were talking about like Fortnite, and at the time I wasn't really into Fortnite, so I was so confused as to everything they were talking about. I was like, this is all over my head, and I
Oh,
felt
totally, yeah.
I felt so old. Um, but to sort of switch gears then a bit, so you're obviously very involved. You've been very involved with various fan communities, and through that, I presume you eventually got your position at Grasshopper Manufacturer. So, for people who don't know the title of community deputy, can you just sort of explain what that is?
Yeah, it's actually a title I made up myself. I took deputy just because first I was thinking of Don Knotts in the Andy Griffith Show, and I was like, yeah, deputy. Okay. Because so my coworker, his name is James. He
Mm-hmm.
is like he's like the main community manager, and he's been with Grasshopper a long time. He's also their localizer,
Mm-hmm.
so he does the translation on all their games because they're a Japanese company.
Mm-hmm.
But then they brought me in after, and just to help more with like the social media stuff, and because he has enough responsibilities being localizer.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was like, since he was technically the community manager, they were like, oh, they're like, what do you want your title to be? You can be like assistant to the community manager or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, I'm gonna come up with a title for myself that's slightly cooler. So that's how I became community deputy. But basically, I manage like the social media. I do like I'll just small projects for with graphics or like subtitles. I'll add subtitles to our videos
Mm-hmm.
when we need certain graphics for like events. I'll design like little stickers. I'll design, we just put Shadows of the Damned on Steam, so I did like all the little Steam icons and trading cards and stuff that you get with Steam games.
Right.
So it's kind of like project based, and I work remotely because they're based in Tokyo, and I live in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so it's just kind of just handling lots of little things like that. But like my day-to-day stuff is just like social media.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think that's especially in, we were talking about, feeling old because things have changed. Would you say that, social media plays a really strong role in promoting games and promoting new IPs as well?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, all of our announcements have either been on YouTube or on Twitter. And I mean, part of that too is, we're a small indie company, so
Mm-hmm.
we can't pay for the spots in the game awards or whatever. Um, we were at a video game convention, PAX East, earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time we'd had a booth at a convention in like 12 years. So
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, so it's really important to have social media as a way to just announce things, because otherwise, it's game magazines aren't really a thing anymore. Um, so it's kind of the main way to do any kind of announcement and any kind of promotion these days.
Right, without a doubt. And adjacent to that is also creating like a community of fans, right, that will engage with this stuff. With I mean, sorry, that's a little reductive. With what you create to promote things, and as well. So what we spoke about like how unhealthy it can get. What would you say is like the role of community when it comes to getting the word out of these like new projects that you have, like Shadows of the Damned, right?
Yeah, it's almost incredible how like self-propelling communities are,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a whole Discord that's just run by fans. We don't have an official Discord. But there's one that, it's like the main one for Grasshopper fans, and they run it and they talk about all the news, and it's like they're so, because of that kind of like fan thing where it's like they pick up on like everything. They're watching videos, they're looking for any hints of like our upcoming games or any kind of information. And so that's like this, and also the fan art and stuff, and it's like self-propelling in its own way, so it's almost kind of separate from like the main stuff that we're doing, because we're just like, okay, we're working on stuff in the office, they're making the games, and then it's kind of like we can promote it when we're ready. And we do our best to hype up stuff, but a lot of that hype just is the community on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of like I said, like being a Metal Gear fan, I kind of had that experience where I was in this time where there's no Metal Gear news,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm just like creating stuff in this kind of desert of Metal Gear, and it's like it's like, it's like they're not doing anything, so I'm doing it. And part of when I joined Grasshopper, we were like maybe like a year and a half after No More Heroes 3
Mm-hmm.
hadn't announced Shadows of the Damned yet. So we were just like I like joined and I'm like, what am I supposed to be tweeting about? Like what do I do? These, we don't have anything to promote right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just like I made like a calendar of like all our release dates of all our games over 25 years. And people, get excited getting into these games that came out 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like a really important role of fandom is just kind of getting into stuff on their own. Like there was no one telling them to play, Silver Case, 6 years after it came out, but
Right.
they're doing it on their own and creating this excitement on their own.
Awesome. And then I agree. I think it's really interesting to just sort of see that crop up on its own. It's like a kind of watching something like a plant grow, right? Where
Yeah.
like it just pops out and all of a sudden it's this huge tree.
Well, and it's just so, and you just never know what people are gonna get into. Like that's the whole thing with like any kind of content creation or these people who are like, oh, this is the algorithm to follow or whatever. And it's like you have no idea
Oh, yeah.
what's gonna go viral, what people are gonna get into, what game is suddenly gonna take off or any of that.
And I agree. I think I remember. I forgot what awards show it was. I think it was the Game Awards, where like a long time ago. I think almost 10 years ago, they did like this thing where all of the presenters are making really cringy, memey jokes,
Hmm.
and they tried to create a meme and sort of promote it,
Oh yeah.
and it was just like really like embarrassing and weird.
Right. And then yeah, but then you have something like Reggie when he stepped on the Wii balance board and said my body is ready. And it's like
Exactly.
and that was just him and that became like an eternal meme. And
Yeah.
so it is that thing where it's like planning any of this is not going to go well.
Exactly, but I do think that the intent, like having the intention of, I guess if we're talking about presentations, having the intention of like having something engaging can facilitate maybe that those meme-worthy moments where then people will then want to check out your thing, like Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk, right? When he just
Mhm, yeah.
popped up and did his thing, and that was all everyone talked about for like a good while.
Yeah, I think Keanu Reeves has the benefit of already like just being a human meme, so he can just kind of show up wherever and it's like magic.
Uh, Absolutely, and I won't lie, I kind of fell for that a bit. I think a lot of us did,
Yeah, no, it totally works. I mean, there's I have those people and it works for me as well.
and that's great. It's just great to have that sort of, ideally you should have that reaction, right? When you try to do something and people do resonate with it, that's the ideal,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely. So I think I have like maybe just one more question for you, and if something branches off, we'll go from there. This one's more for me. I am doing this for my radio show, but this is just a straight like nerd question.
Sure.
So, how do you work close to Goichi Suda at all? Have you met him?
Oh, yeah. So I mean, so I just moved back from Japan
Mm-hmm.
like 3 or 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was living in there, I was working with Grasshopper and I'd work in the office occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he is the one thing about Suda is I feel a very genuine person. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like he is like I mean obviously when he does a bit of a persona, but it's a persona that's very much based on himself.
Right.
And his the office setup in Grasshopper, he doesn't have a separate office. His desk is just at the back of the main workspace.
Right.
Grasshopper has about 50 or people so at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just you have all the computers, everybody working, and then Suda's just in the back. So yeah, I've definitely worked with him directly on multiple occasions. And yeah, he's a very cool guy and fortunate to work for and such a cool company.
I definitely agree, and I feel like you definitely have like the talent to be there. I feel because I think you have a lot of that similar energy from what I've seen. You know, because they had exude that sort of just like I guess you would call it like kind of punk rock, sort of like we're gonna do things and we think this is cool. We're gonna put this out, and you
Yeah,
know,
exactly. I mean, so we just released the remaster of Shadows of the Damned
mm-hmm,
on Halloween, which is the original came out in 2011.
mm-hmm.
And the only review that Suda's retweeted was someone who gave it a 3 out of 10.
Oh,
He's like, "Look at this awesome review." And it's like, and that's like they always are like that because I mean, Grasshoppers games are not usually kind of widespread appeal.
Oh
They're
yeah.
good, but they're like weird and they're kind of janky, and so they don't necessarily appeal to the broadest audience. And a lot of the times they get like these kind of middling scores. And when No More Heroes 3 came out,
Mm-hmm.
they put the meta score for Travis Strikes Again, which was like a 66 or something, like something not very good. And they
Right.
like put it in the trailer. They're like, look, these are like you love our games or whatever. And that like self-awareness and that ability to be like, we know we're not making AAA games.
Mm-hmm.
We're proud that we're making these games that a lot of people love a lot, but maybe not the widest range of people. And so I think that like I like that like that sincerity and that genuineness.
I agree because like I played No More Heroes 3. I love No More Heroes. It's like my one of my favorite series. It's for me it's like Devil May Cry like at the very top, and then Doom, and then maybe below Doom is like Metal Gear, and then maybe below that is like No More Heroes.
Yeah.
I love No More Heroes, and I do find that sort of irreverence and that sincerity that comes from it because it is so weird. Like it's such a weird series, but that
Hmm.
sincerity really does shine through. And I played No More and reviewed No More Heroes 3 for a site, and I saw the other reviews after the fact, and I'm like, that's like a good game's a 9, dude. That game's a 9, straight 9 out of 10. If I had to grade, I don't like grading things. I think numbers are kind of
Yeah.
silly for reviews. But if I had to recommend it, it's like get it. It's such a fascinating game.
Yeah, and it's like the mixture of like art design and stuff. I remember one thing that was going around on Twitter when No More Heroes 3 came out, people were like criticizing the graphics. They were like this looks like a PS2 game. And then all the fans were like, "Yeah, it does."
No, it really does.
It's just like stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean the reason I got hired was because I was a fan of their games and they
Uh,
found me through Twitter doing like No More Heroes fan art. So they're appreciative of their community because it's they have to they're very self-aware that we have to be thankful for the fans we do have because we're not maybe as popular as some of the other companies. Though, despite that, despite our games not being, the best-selling games, um, Suda has quite a presence. He's
oh yeah.
probably one of the most well-recognized game designers, especially for Japanese game designers, I think.
Oh, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like whenever I like talk to someone about like Japanese game development, my go tos are usually like obviously like Hideo Kojima, and then you have
Like Miyamoto,
Itsuno,
Kamiya, yeah.
Hideki Kamiya, and then you have. But I always mention Goichi Suda because he's just so passionate. I see that in him. He's so in there, and even if the thing he makes is a little funky, right? I appreciate that it exists at all because it's just so it's filled with personality.
Yeah, and he's someone who also is pretty blatant about putting the things he likes in games. Like if you've ever like a lot of the alien bosses in No More Heroes 3, their names are references to bands or to songs.
Oh yeah.
Like Silver Case, the ending of all the chapters was usually like a lyrics from the Smiths or someone like that. And
Hmm.
so he's very I think he's appreciates his fan because he is someone who is a fan himself.
Oh, absolutely. I know he's like deep into like Takashi Miike. He loves his Miike
Yeah.
films because that was like one of the biggest, most prominent things in No More Heroes 3. So I get that sense. He's like a fan creating games for other fans of like the similar funky things that he likes, and I really do appreciate that. That's why I at least come to the new Grasshopper games. I've never played Shadows of the Damned, mind you. I've always wanted to, and now that this remaster is out, I might do so.
Oh, awesome.
But it's good to know that you enjoy working there, and that you are that you are are able to contribute and do creative things in a professional in a professional setting.
Yeah, yeah, and well, it's cool because I'm technically like a contractor with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also, which is nice because it gives me the freedom to also work with other companies. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've done contract or like commissioned work for Konami for Metal Gear before,
Mm-hmm.
as well as for some other series. And because I'm there's I like a lot of different video games from different companies. So it's also nice that I'm able to have that freedom with Grasshopper where they allow me to do other work.
Definitely. And so I guess like I guess this, since we're mentioning this, like how do how is life like as a contractor in the gaming industry?
So I'm in such a weird position, honestly, because I just, I was able to luckily just get a lot of attention from the comics I make. And so my main income at the moment is actually from my Patreon,
Mm-hmm.
which I do like a monthly postcard and sticker sheet based on a video game. And then like I have, I do my part-time work for Grasshopper.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm luckily because I'm like with that, I have a comfortable amount of income to live off of. So I don't have to like try to apply for work or search for work. And fortunately, people just tend to come to me. Like Konami came to me because they just, saw my passion for Metal Gear and they're like, here, like make a comic for us for the Master Collection. And I've had a few other instances like that. So that's kind of a nice bonus thing. And it's because I'm doing fan art, sometimes it's like, oh, this isn't official, so it doesn't feel as rewarding necessarily. So when I do get like commissioned work, when I've done license, I've designed like some albums for like Legend of the Mystical Ninja and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like very rewarding because then it's like, oh, like my artwork's good enough to be on a professional level.
And I agree, because it really is. It's just so charming. I would say it's incredibly charming, because like
Thank you.
absolutely, because I just look at it and I smile. When it's like like Snake looking silly, or James sticking his hand in the toilet, right? Or Leon with the hundreds of fish in his jacket.
Yeah.
That stuff just makes me like crack a smile personally. So I think you do really good work.
Thank you
And
very much.
have such a wonderful little style that you can call your own,
Mm.
absolutely. And so to sort of close out this part of the conversation, what advice would you give to sort of younger artists who maybe want to do something like this as a career?
Yeah, I mean, it's so random, and I feel like a lot of people are like, some people just get too committed to trying to like appease an algorithm or get onto the trend. But for me, what ended up working was just doing what I like. And then, I've been on Twitter, like I said, since 2018, and it wasn't until like 2022 where I really blew up. But I was still enjoying myself because I was just making art that was fun for me, and it ended up being enjoyable for other people. So I think my big thing is just make do something that you enjoy even if you don't have an audience. And
Mm.
it's just kind of be true to yourself. Try don't hop on trends just because you feel you need to. Because I hopped onto a game that was in a complete desert and it just happened to work for me. So it's like you never know what has an audience. So just do what you enjoy, because even if you're not getting an audience at the time, you at least, respect yourself and have enjoyment despite that.
Absolutely. And I think those are some really good words, because I feel like creatives right now are just having it's kind of rough for anyone who's doing like either art or writing, you
Yeah,
know.
and the animation industry, the games industry, it's a very difficult place, and I empathize with a lot of creators.
Same here. It's why I want like why in on my segments I like to talk to people who are, like I said, boots on the ground. They do a lot of they do art, or they do, or maybe they're the single develop. Like I talked, one of the last people I talked to, he's just one guy making a game, like
Yeah.
just him. And to me, that's just, those are the kind of people I want to like spotlight, because this is the reality. This is the kind of work that goes into creating the things that people enjoy.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
and to me, that's just very important. So thank you, again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for talking to me for this long.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Do you have if people wanted to find your work, where would they look for you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on both Twitter and Blue Sky at the moment. My handle is that's raspberry, just the letter O, that's raspberry. My website is othatsraspberry.com, which is like a archive of all my comics. I also stream on Twitch, same handle, that's raspberry. So any of that, you can find my stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Maddie, for taking the time to talk to me. Like I said, I really appreciate the kind of passion you have for the games that I also happen to like, uh, and thank you for making all those fun comics. Really.
Yeah, thank you so much.